Hello Year 5 and 6 and welcome to today's Monday's lesson. Today we are going to be reading Running Wild and we are going to be starting to plan our story. This whole week we are going to be competing in a specific award which will be introduced to you later on. But we're really excited to see everybody's writing this week. So let's get started. And while I'm loading up the presentation, I want you to think what has happened so far to Will and what do we think will happen next. So, we know that Mr. Anthony has plans for Will and what he wants to do to him. We're aware that he wants to sell him to an Indian circus where he's going to become a monkey boy. And it finished on Friday with Will reciting the words of the poem, The Tiger. So, what do we think is going to happen next? Let's find out what happens. So, we're going to read the story now, and if you are reading along, we're going to start on page 193, and we're starting from when I had finished The Crowd Stayed Hushed. So you can feel free to listen along, or if you're reading along at home, that's where we're starting from today. And we're going to finish on page 198, where it says, "Have you got the key?" When I had finished The Crowd Stayed Hushed, I saw that same flicker of uncertainty on Mr. Anthony's face. It was a victory of sorts, for me, for the little orangutans, for the tiger. I knew after all that had happened, and with all that was going to happen to us, that it was only a little victory, but it meant a great deal to me all the same. It meant I had not surrendered, that I could at least hold my head high as I was led away through the crowd back to our cage behind the cookhouse. I sat there all day long in the cage with the orangutans, trying to comfort them as best as I could. There were always dozens of curious miners and their families around the cage, pushing and shoving to get a better look at us. And although most of them came only to mock, there were a few families, often those with small children, who just squatted there, gazing at us, fascinated. It seemed as much by me as by the orangutans. Why do you think they might have been amazed and fascinated by Will? Do you think they would have seen somebody like him before? When they dared, and they dared more when I smiled at them, I discovered some of the smaller children in particular would reach in and touch my hair and would even let the little orangutans hold to their fingers. They would giggle then, and I loved to hear that. There was a curiosity and a gentleness in their eyes that gave me new heart, and as the day wore on, I needed that more and more. I could feel my spirit sinking fast, as the heat and the hunger and the thirst got to me, and to the orangutans too. Thankfully, they slept a lot, but when they woke, they would be looking incessantly and urgently for food, begging for it, and I had none to give them. I want us just to go back there and look at the word incessantly. What do you think that word might mean? Incessantly and urgently for food, begging for it, and I had none to give them. All I could do was hug them, talk to them, stroke them, but it was never enough. It was some comfort to me that I could see Kaya chopping his vegetables, stirring over his stove all day, and ladling out endless meals for the miners and their families. It was fast becoming clear to me that in this place everyone was expected to work. Men, women, and the older children too. They worked long hours from dawn to dusk, with little time off for rest or for meal breaks. They had to scoff their food down in a great hurry and were always overseen by foremen who strutted about everywhere, blowing their whistles and harrying them back to work, threatening them with their sticks if they ever thought anyone was malingering. Another word there, malingering, just means like pausing or waiting. I sat there trying to ignore the delicious smell of cooking food wafting across from Kaya's kitchen. It kept reminding me just how hungry I was. The orangutans could smell it too, which was a relief to me, because after a while they stopped pestering me for food and hung on to the bars, looking longingly across to the cookhouse. One or two of the children did try to feed them scraps through the bars of the cage, but the foreman soon shouted at them and shooed them away. Shoo, shoo. All this time, Kaya never once even glanced in our direction, and I began to wonder if he had forgotten about us altogether. As it turned out, he did come again, but it wasn't until darkness fell that evening. The familiar night chorus from the jungle started up, and that was a great comfort to me, to know it was so close, but it was soon drowned out by the sound of music pulsating from Mr. Anthony's house, and there was raucous laughter and wild whooping going on inside. I was sitting there thinking about how it would be for me in the circus in India, whether there'd be elephants. I was hoping there would be. Then I got to thinking about Una again, longing for her to come for us, praying she would. And that's when I saw Kaya coming running through the darkness towards us from the now deserted cookhouse. He had a basket with him. He crouched down beside the cage and put his finger to his lips. He had brought us more fruit, but it was a different sort of fruit this time, with a coarse, prickly skin that he cut and opened up for us. The orangutans fell on it at once and gorged themselves. I wasn't quick enough and was quickly reduced to picking up their scraps. So I was over the moon when Kaya took a small bowl from his basket and handed it to me through the bars. It was rice. I put my back to the orangutans and shoveled it into my mouth before they even noticed I had it. Luckily for me, they were still incessantly occupied eating their fruit. Kaya had brought us bottles of water too, enough for all of us. I helped each one of them drink it down, then I drank the rest myself until there wasn't a drop left. Kaya waited until I'd finished drinking before he said anything. I like very much this poem you spoke, he whispered. I know it also. I learned it in my mission school long time ago, when I was a boy like you. Fine poem. It stay in my head forever, I think. And a mission school, year 5-6, is a school which is set up by Christians who go across the world to other countries, and they set up schools and they educate the children. He looked about him nervously, then leaned forward. Listen, I have bad news for you. I serve the food in the house for Mr. Anthony and the hunters. They have big party in there. They celebrate killing of the tiger. I hear them talking. They are telling him, you must be killed because you have seen their faces. You know who they are. You could tell the police. It is against the law to kill tiger, to take orangutan. If they are caught, they go to prison for a long time. They know this. So they tell Mr. Anthony, do not sell him to the circus. You must kill this monkey boy. I'm very much afraid Mr. Anthony will do this. You know his face too. You know too much. You must leave this place. You must escape. But how? I asked him. Look at that padlock. There's no way of getting it open without a key. Have you got the key? And that is where we are going to end today, because we now know that Will and Kaya have got to form a plan to escape. And this is where you are going to write your story, year 5 and 6. So we've got to start thinking now of what ideas and how might Will escape. So let's go back to our presentation. So today we're going to plan to use key vocabulary, to use ed, ing, ly sentence starters, plan to use similes and metaphors, and plan to use pronouns. Now, 3 of these things we have been doing last week, so we should have it fresh in our mind, but we have lots of resources to help you. Now, this week we are going to be awarding a year 5-6 lockdown writing award, as it's our last week of term. Now, first place, you are going to receive a £10 Amazon gift voucher. Second place, you will win a book. And third place will win a set of stationery. And we're going to look at how you're going to win and what you're going to be judged on for those winning prizes. So, how could Will escape? We're now going to look at sharing our ideas, year 5 and 6. Now, how we're going to share our ideas is something a little bit new, because usually we would talk partner in class, but we don't have that opportunity today. So we've set up a class notebook on Teams. So if you go to activity in general year 5 and 6, you'll see that we have this option here. And if you click on Class Notebook, it should load up. And I've started the ideas for us. So, running wild story ideas. And what you can do is you can magpie and share your ideas. So I put 2 ideas down. And if you want to, you can set up without even typing by pressing the microphone button up here, clicking to allow access, and then you'll be able to talk through your ideas. So watch this. I think Will might escape by asking Kaya for a knife so he can cut open the bars. Sometimes it might get it all, it might miss some words and make some spelling mistakes. So you can just go around by asking Kaya so we can cut open the bars. I need to make sure that I edit Kaya with a proper noun of a name with a capital letter. And you can share your ideas here, year 5 and 6, and you can come to this and magpie any of your classmates' ideas. But let's get back to our presentation. So, how could Will escape? What ideas do you think could happen? And we have a picture here of the production, which was in Chichester, and it went around the country. We can see Will here is locked up with the orangutans, and Kaya is there helping him. What might they be able to do? How would you escape? What ideas can you think of? Write them down and jot them down, because you'll need them later on, and you'll also need them for tomorrow's lesson. So we're now looking at wow vocabulary. And this vocabulary we have had throughout the book. And what vocabulary would you like to magpie? Now you have your plans that you have on the assignment resources, or you might be using a paper plan. And what I want you to do is to now jot down all of that vocabulary. Maybe you want to look at how you're going to write it in a sentence. And again, you can go back to this board and you might want to just again, anyone can share their ideas, and I'm going to use the word hullabaloo. I knew I had to cause a distraction. Baloo. And again, you can magpie those ideas. If not, keep them to yourself. The next thing we need to do in our plan today is looking at how we're going to use our sentence starters. So we know that we can use these as fronted adverbials. We don't have to though. We might just want to use them as a bank of sentences within the story. So look at the resource, pause the presentation and jot down how are you going to use these statements and these sentence starters. Can you think of any ideas? Running and exhausted, Will sprinted away. Having witnessed Mr. Anthony and the hunters coming down, he knew he had to escape. Climbing athletically over the bars, Will sprinted with the orangutans away. All of these are different ideas for sentence starters that we might want to use. When it comes to similes and metaphors, again, feel free to use these resources. They're attached in the assignments, and it just gives you an example of what sort of similes and what sort of metaphors you might want to use. And again, if you want to, you can come in here and look and share your ideas. Will sprinted as fast as a cheetah. Will's tiger's roar filled the rainforest. And we've got an example there of a simile and a metaphor. And the final thing we're looking at is pronouns. And we did these last week. So we're looking at how we're going to use pronouns to make our story less repetitive. And this story is going to be written in the first person. So what relative pronouns can we use? Can you come up with a bank of relative clauses? Can you think of what pronouns you want to use? And you can go back to your work from last week to help you with this. So now it's time to share your plan. So take it to a family member or to an adult and just share any of your ideas, and maybe they can help you and support you with any ideas. Finally, remember that if you have any questions, you can always go to the posts, and if you start up a new conversation, and tag in your teacher, you'll be able to ask Miss Bruce, Miss Noble, Miss Heath, or Mrs. Kirby a question, and they can help generate the ideas for you as well. So tomorrow we're going to be looking at planning the story arc. And again, today, all we were looking for is, if we go all the way back through our presentation, back to our success criteria, we're just looking at planning to use the key vocabulary, our sentence starters, our similes and metaphors, and plan to use pronouns. Now, it's your chance to get on with your plan. Remember that in English, we would be using this time of about 20 to 30 minutes to go over our plan and to make sure we have a really big bank of writing sentences and ideas that we can bring up with our writing later on in the week. We look forward to seeing the plans and helping you to remember. Use the class notebook, use the teachers and tag them, and hopefully we'll be able to get a big and ginormous variety of vocabulary, pronouns, and those sentence starters to help. We look forward to seeing your work, and we can't wait to plan the story out with you tomorrow. Goodbye, Year 5 and 6.